Each year, nearly 1 in 9 girls under 18 experiences sexual contact with an adult. Most of their stories never make headlines, but one did. And then it was buried, because the man at the center of it wasn't a stranger. He was an NBA legend. This is the story the league never wanted you to remember. The untold story of Karl Malone. In 1983, Karl Malone was a 20-year-old star at Louisiana Tech, a hometown hero chasing his NBA dream. But away from the gym, his life took a disturbing turn. That same year, Malone began a relationship with Gloria Bell, a 13-year-old girl still in middle school. The result was a child, Demetrius Bell. From the moment he was born, the story was complicated. Malone never embraced him. He didn't provide support, he didn't claim him publicly, and he didn't want to be seen as responsible. The Bell family took the matter to court, and DNA confirmed what they already knew. Karl Malone was the father. Even then, Malone resisted. According to reports, when child support was discussed, Malone allegedly offered just $125 a week. A number so small it was insulting, especially from a man on the verge of becoming a millionaire athlete. Eventually, a private settlement was reached, but it didn't change the reality. Demetrius grew up without a father, while Malone's life moved on. By 1985, Malone was drafted into the NBA by the Utah Jazz. His career soared. He became an all-star, an MVP, and a household name. But back in Louisiana, Demetrius Bell was left to carry the weight of being the son of one of basketball's biggest stars, a son his father refused to recognize. Everyone close to Malone knew the story. The court records were there. Local papers had covered it. But in the NBA, silence. On national broadcasts, nothing. The Mailman's reputation stayed spotless. His scandal sat in plain sight, but no one wanted to deliver it. But what happened to the boy Malone refused to claim? Demetrius Bell grew up in Louisiana, carrying a last name that wasn't his father's. His mother raised him, his community supported him, but the one person who should have been there wasn't. Karl Malone knew Demetrius was his son. The courts knew it, yet Malone refused to step into his life. When the family pushed for child support, Malone reportedly offered as little as $125 a week, an amount so low it was insulting, especially from a man who would soon be earning millions in the NBA. Demetrius didn't get the chance to know his father. Instead, he chased success on his own terms, turning to football and eventually making it to the NFL as an offensive tackle. When he entered the league in 2008, reporters made the connection. This was Karl Malone's son, but even then Malone kept his distance and Bell kept his silence. Asked about his father, Demetrius gave short, guarded answers. It was clear the wounds ran deep. To the public, it was shocking. The Mailman, an NBA icon, had a son in the NFL who barely knew him. To Demetrius, it was simply life. The Mailman had delivered championships, MVPs, and records. But when it came to his own son, he never showed up. And as shocking as that was, Demetrius Bell wasn't the only child Malone left in the shadows. Around the same time, he fathered twins with another young woman in Louisiana, Cheryl and Daryl Ford. Unlike Demetrius, these children eventually forced their way into Malone's story. Their mother took legal action, and Malone was confirmed as the father. But just like before, he resisted any responsibility. For years, he kept his distance, refusing to build a relationship with them, while his NBA career soared. The twins grew up knowing who their father was, one of the most famous athletes in the world. But they were strangers to him. While Malone collected MVPs and chased championships, they watched from the outside, carrying his DNA but not his presence. It wasn't until they became adults that Cheryl and Daryl reconnected with Malone. Even then, the relationship was complicated, marked by decades of absence that no late introduction could erase. For Malone, the basketball world offered praise, applause, and a spotless reputation. But off the court, his personal life was a trail of denials and broken connections. Children left to grow up without the father who should have been there. But eventually, those children came looking for answers. Time eventually forced Karl Malone to confront what he had ignored. As his children grew older, some sought him out. The twins, Cheryl and Daryl Ford, built their own lives but reconnected with him as adults. Their relationship with Malone was civil, but it could never erase the years of absence. With Demetrius Bell, it was even more complicated. By the time he reached the NFL, the world knew Karl Malone was his father. Reporters pressed for answers, but Bell rarely spoke about it, and Malone mostly stayed silent. When asked about his father, Demetrius once admitted, "I treat it as if I don't have a father." Over time, there were small signs of reconciliation. Quiet meetings, brief connections, attempts to bridge a lifetime of distance, but those bonds remained fragile, built on wounds too deep to fully heal. For Malone, the children he once denied were now adults who no longer needed him. For the children, the father they once wanted was now just another complicated part of their story. And yet, through it all, the NBA stayed quiet. The most shocking part of Karl Malone's scandal isn't just what he did, it's how little anyone talked about it. By the mid-1990s, Malone was one of the NBA's biggest stars, battling Michael Jordan in back-to-back finals, racking up MVP trophies, and becoming the face of the Utah Jazz. Yet the story of him fathering children with underage girls barely made a ripple in the media. Local papers in Louisiana reported on it. Court records existed. The family spoke out, but nationally, silence. The NBA didn't comment. Broadcasters didn't bring it up. And fans, swept up in the battles of the 90s, barely knew it existed. It was as if the league wanted the controversy erased. Protecting the mailman's image meant protecting the NBA's product. And so the story was buried, left to whispers instead of headlines. For Malone, that silence was a shield. His career went untouched, his reputation as a superstar intact. But scandals don't stay buried forever, because in the age of the internet, buried stories always find their way back. For years, Karl Malone's past stayed in the shadows, but the internet changed everything. As social media grew, fans started digging. Old articles resurfaced. Court documents were shared online. Suddenly, the story the NBA never told was everywhere. And Malone's image as a Hall of Fame legend came under fire. Whenever he appeared in the spotlight, whether it was the All-Star game in Salt Lake City or a rare interview, the scandal followed. Younger fans who had never heard it before were shocked. Older fans asked why it was ignored for so long. The mailman couldn't outrun the truth anymore. What the league and media buried in the 80s and 90s was now being dissected, shared, and debated on every platform. And for many, it permanently changed the way they saw him. So where does that leave Karl Malone's legacy today? On paper, Karl Malone is one of the greatest ever. 2 MVPs, 14 All-Stars, second on the all-time scoring list. But legacy is bigger than numbers. Malone's will always be tied to the children he denied and the scandal the NBA never faced. Some say his personal life shouldn't touch his career. Others say you can't celebrate one without acknowledging the other. Either way, the shadow remains. The mailman delivered on the court. Off it, his story tells a very different truth. This was Karl Malone's Untold story, and as always, stay legendary.